Well, good morning. Thank you very much for joining our conversation, and I hope it's going to be a conversation, not a monologue, about CNCF, about TOC, about TAB, TAG, so mainly about what CNCF does, the landscape that it fits in, part of Linux Foundation, and the work that this new group of people are actually working on. I'm Sergiu I'm representing Allianz, and also I'm a CNCF TAB member. And
hey everyone. I'm Mario. I'm working at Mercedes-Benz Tech Innovation. And as Sergiu, I'm a member of the CNCF EndUser Technical Advisory Board. And at the moment, I'm very focused on all things about developer productivity.
Wonderful. We have an agenda. We decided to take a few steps backwards and really start with the base, with the bedrock. We have a few minutes that we want to dedicate to Linux Foundation, what it means. It's much more than maybe all of us knows about it, or at least in the last years it became that. And then we're going to spend some time talking really in the CNCF, what it does, why it's here, why it's important, some organizational structures like TOC, TAB, some responsibilities and some working streams that we are working. And at the end, we're going to have a very short Q&A, maybe longer, depends how fast we move. But I'm saying short because from 12:40 we have a dedicated room where we can actually have more discussions around the topics that ideally you're going to follow up with. We're going to be here probably the whole day, so don't be shy, reach out to us and engage with us on anything. We are very happy to collect feedback because we are representing end users, and we wanna. But you're gonna say, I don't wanna spoil the presentation. Let's go in. So, short intro. Linux Foundation. It's more than Linux. It has become really a set of foundations that are dealing with different problems from IT space, and they are leading, of course, the space around open source innovation, about collaborations on areas such as security. You probably know Let's Encrypt. Then we have more work on networking, on cloud, where cloud native fits, but we also do some work on automotive, blockchain, web, and there is also about climate OX, some other foundations. So this is just a subset of the most interesting communities behind Linux Foundation. The reason behind every single community and every single foundation is technology and different revolutions or different needs that the technology as a whole needs. And our story, the Cloud Native Foundation story, basically started in 2015 with the appearance of cloud native technologies. I mean, it was announced. You see here an interesting map on how innovation started to rise on different period of time. And of course, it took us 2 years now to move from containers to cloud native. And it's not a coincidence that it goes hand in hand with the birth of Kubernetes and orchestrations. You might know CNCF from this landscape. This is something that catches your attention and normally stays with you. It's overwhelming, and this is a simplified version. Now it's even larger. This is a landscape with all the concerns that you might have when you think about doing a cloud native journey. And most of the projects that you're probably using are coming from here. Some of them might be open source. I mean, most of them are open source, but some others are like vendor-based, and you get some extra qualities around it. There is also a mission and a statement. Of course, when you build a community, you need to know why you're doing it and why others should interact with you. And as you see, it was founded in 2015. And what was the mission for it, is really to bring together the world of developers, vendors, larger open source hyperscalers, and build communities and trust around conversation around open source. I didn't mention intentionally the end users because we're going to get to that part immediately.
So, as Sergiu already said, there is the CNCF, and within the CNCF there are, till end of last year, there are 2 main organizations within the CNCF, and one was the governing board, but from an engineering perspective, it's not that super interesting right now. But there's also the TOC, and probably already every one of you or some of you already know the TOC. At least you might know some phases of the TOC. And the TOC is the technical governing board of the TOC, and it admits and oversees all the projects so in the CNCF itself. And so it has a mandate to facilitate a consensus for defining and maintaining a technical vision and principles of the CNCF, and it also approves new projects and also align and removing or archiving projects. So yeah, and since end of last year, it also hopefully accepts feedback from us from the tab and map this feedback to projects. So, and the TOC itself, it has this technical vision, and if you take a look at this, the CNCF landscape, all these products or projects, all these are very problem-centric projects. So everyone tries to solve one dedicated problem and not doing all these things together. So each project is very problem-centric. And the TOC supports the projects and solve problems so faced by the adopters and end users to build the right ecosystem, so to embrace the changes in the broader technical landscape. And it's here to exercise and increase the expertise within the technical community, so every one of us to compose a solution that stands the test of the time. So yeah, so Kubernetes is, I think, the favorite project in the CNCF landscape. It's also a graduated project. Prometheus is already there since the beginning, I would say, as well as Istio, but there are some other projects like Cilium, which is quite new, or at least a graduated project since, well, I'm super bad in remembering the time, but I think it's not less than 1 year. And we have also other projects like gRPC or Thanos or Notary, but there are also projects like, for example, Cortex, which, so we will tackle that point later, which is a CNCF project, but it's not that healthy from a CNCF point of view or from a community point of view, but yeah, we will have some slides for that later on. And yeah, some sandbox projects which applies to become CNCF graduated projects. And I think that's an actual list of the projects.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about TOC. We didn't talk about governing boards. Every single community has a governing board that it's mainly driven by different vendors. You have probably, I don't know, whenever you become a platinum member, you get a seat in a governing board, and then you have the big vendors basically driving the community. So we had the techies, and then we had the big vendors, but something was missing. Something was completely missing in really focusing and delivering the message from the end user perspective. And that's where the tab comes. We need more input, and we need to build technology for vendors, but I mean, vendors have to build technology for users, consumers, and at the end of this chain, we have the big end users that are consuming that technology, and they have some kind of different problems. And they don't have necessarily financial problems, they don't necessarily have, let's say, technical problems, but they have to bring different set of issues like, I don't know, production ready. What does that mean for a project that never runs actually in production? Support in case something goes bad. Then you have to have a certain future proof, for a project that you're gonna bet your life with, because if you're in a P1 incident, you're gonna be very alone if you don't have any kind of feedback from a project. And this is where we basically come in as a working group, and we basically have a conversation with both sides, with the governing board, and also a conversation with the TOC, and we try to bring our voices, make them louder, and for that we are talking to end users, and hopefully, I mean, how many of you are actually end users or are considering yourself end users? Great. Wonderful. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear what problems you have. We want to hear what you want to get from TAB, and then we can amplify your message. We are still in a phase where we really clarify our mission. We want to achieve few things. We have some working groups we're going to be talking about, and hopefully that's going to bring you value. We had interviews during KubeCon and other KCDs events, and we reflect those concerns in our work. But more about that in the next slides. Right now, as I said, we want to represent the voice of the end users in all decisions, both financial and also technical. We want to make sure that we support you all with clarity around the cloud native journey. It's complicated enough. If you remember the landscape, that's very hard to navigate. So why take the risk of failing? Over that. So basically, our purpose is to be a voice and really reflect that in all the decisions that are being made. You cannot have this kind of decision without being part of the decision. We have some colleagues with us. We are obviously not the only ones. On the edges, you see Mario and you see myself. You have maybe, if you're part of the community for a while, you might know Katie. She's also a TOC member. I'm sure you know Ricardo from Chern. He's really a strong personality and really fighting for the end users. Alolita, Henrik from Intuit, Gary. So very interesting and yeah, very capable persons behind this work, and influential as well, because they have to be influential to steer the governing board in a certain direction. We have 3 main working streams right now that we hope they're going to deliver value, and they're going to build the reputation for us so that we can carry the message and more messages further on in the future. I'm going to be talking about the first one. Mario will take the next 2. I'm taking the next one because this is I'm leading this working group together with Gary from JP Morgan, and in this working stream, for example, what we are doing is really trying to give a certain direction either to newcomers or to anyone is struggling with the cloud native journey. Building something that is future-proof and building it without failing a few times, it can be tricky. And you have different states, different maturity states. Every organization is in a certain phase, and depending on where you are, you can have several options on the table. And you might be, deciding to use a certain stack that fits with the capabilities you already have in your organization, or the ones that you can build on the market that you are operating in. And depending on that, you have to find a way. Initially, when we started working on this working group, we had to pause a second because reference architecture, it's already loaded by meaning. You understand so many things, and there is a lot of work happening either with Canoe organization, which is being pushed by and sustained by supported by AWS, and then you have even McKinsey. It's talking about building reference architectures, but more often you find like somehow vendor-driven conversation again, not end users. So it's there is a clear, obvious interest behind the work that is happening, and this is where we want to step in and say we represent the community, the end users. We work for them. We normally push projects which are cloud native ready in a certain maturity state, and we just don't look at the state. Most of the projects I referred to a few seconds ago, are working on a certain state, architecture state. But there is so much more to that. That's what we found out in our conversation. It's basically a journey, right? You're going to have different states at different point of time, depending on the maturity that you're in. So having the journey in front of you and getting different possible journeys for yourself, different projections, is going to help you build the capabilities that allows you to build the next state and maintain it and evolve it, together with the community behind you. Because it's always good to see what others are doing, and what works for others most likely will work for you if you're working in the same context, if you have the same setup, like you're a highly regulated environment in Germany. Most likely you have to look at a certain end user that operates in similar way as you are, because they are on the same market, same talent, same stack, same regulation. So if they can do it, you can do it. So that's the type of work we are doing. We don't want to, there is a tricky thing here. If you try to become a king player, I guess, kingmaker, is the term, then you're gonna get a lot of backslash from a lot of vendors, very powerful vendors, no? And you're not gonna fully represent the whole ecosystem. So to fight that, we decided not to be a kingmaker, but instead we wanna hear stories and reference architectures from end users, put them in a certain cluster. Like we say, that's the financial industry in Germany, right? And that's a cluster of reference architectures, or maybe you identify one single reference architecture that fits and consolidate on all the experiences the end users have. And then you're gonna have different stories that really relate to your problem. So that's the work we are doing. What you see here, it's Allianz Direct or Allianz journey towards platform engineering. We have a certain state. This is one of the 5 states we had recorded during the years. This is the last one. Actually, not the last one. We have another one that is now being created. And then below you see the journey that it took us basically to build this state over 3 years. So we are happy probably to share this in a certain way. We are working on the mechanism behind that. We're going to have a page or more pages where you have collection of things that you can access. You can access us for probably for a like more private conversation. Not everything can really be public, because then you expose yourself as a company to certain critiques. So we have to be able to find the process that navigates all these complexities and still bring value to all the end users. So that will be me. Mario?
Okay, the next topic is project health visibility. So that's the second working group we decided to, or that's the second topic we decided to put into a working group and work on that. Because, so at least the CNCF got feedback from many end users. It's super hard to see how healthy your project is. So especially, so as for example, Cortex or also Linkerd, it's someone as an end user, you do not expect using Linkerd hosted under that foundation that they will change their license, and then, you are some kind of loss. So that's one of the biggest issues a lot of users are having. And I can also say that in the previous project, we often had to check or compare solutions, for example, Argo CD versus Flux or other techniques which are quite similar, and then we have to check, okay, what are the projects, what are they doing, which company is contributing into this project, and and how's the diversity of this project from a company perspective. And so it's this working group and also the other working group, there's not that much progress yet, so because the reference architecture is doing very, very well. The other ones are still in the starting, just started. But we already had few sessions with the Linux Foundation, because the Linux Foundation, so not even the CNCF, also the Linux Foundation has similar projects, and their end users have also similar issues with the project health visibility. And from an end user perspective, at the moment, the only thing you can do is checking the GitHub repository, or if you know there is devstats.cncf.io, it's some kind of a modified Grafana board where you can have some metrics or visualization of some metrics, and then you have to understand the metrics and see, okay, this is how healthy the project looks like. And that's quite complicated, and everyone has to do that by their own. And during the discussions with the Linux Foundation, we came to the point, okay, we need something that a or an end user should be able to see the health of a project within 2 minutes, something like that. And we came to the conclusion that the open source, the OpenSSF, the Secure Software Foundation, has the scorecards implemented, and probably some of you already know there are a few projects out there which have these OpenSSF scorecards in their GitHub repository, and you are able to see how secure this code is or how their build environment is built and stuff like that. And we decided we need something similar, that it's easy from a user perspective to see how healthy that project is. And so this is the higher goal. We try to achieve that a project is able, so it's able to see the health of a project within 2 minutes or something like that. So the Linux Foundation at the moment is implementing a tool which is in beta state, and it's public beta. It's called LFX Insights. So Google that, LFX Insight, and then you can choose the CNCF. And if I'm not mistaken, since last week, all CNCF graduated projects are reflected in LFX Insights, and so it gives you a much more better overview with the same data as DevStats to see some kind of project metrics. And the next step might be reflecting the health of the project into that health overview as well. So, and with that, and that's also one reason why we are here, for that we really need input from users, from the end users. So because some of us already know some soft metrics which might be relevant when it came to a product decision, but we need all this input. What are your main priorities when you decide for a project? So that's one of the next things we try to do: collect and define relevant end user health metrics. And the other one, it's quite early, and it's that end users often report to the CNCF that it's super hard to share feedback. To share feedback with the projects itself. So there are GitHub issues, and I would say developers know how to raise issues or propose pull requests and stuff like that. But a lot of users are not able to do that because they do not know, or they are some kind of unsure how to do that. And and the projects itself are complaining about missing feedback from the end users. So this is also one of the working groups we raised to make it easier for end users to report feedback to the projects itself. So, and we do not decided on anything yet, but the higher goal is something like a common feedback channel, which is something you have to implement when it came to a project graduation into the CNCF, that you provide some kind of end user feedback channels, or feedback channels which are easy to use or consume from an end user, and that these feedback channels are some kind of consistent over all CNCF projects. So, so we started last year, end of last year, and I would say after KubeCon in Paris, we started building this working groups, and so there are a few other topics on our list, but we decided to start with these three main topics because we see a high need on these topics to get an answer to the end users. So, but we are super interested in what other goals we should like to, or you would like to see that we would like to address. So, as Sergiu already said, we have this dedicated Q&A forum after lunch or during lunch. But there's also a public Slack channel in the CNCF Slack, so not the Kubernetes Slack. It's based on the CNCF Slack, so there's a tab channel. It's a public channel. Join this channel, raise your questions there. We are very happy to get your input on the Slack channel as well. There's also an EndUser TAB repository under the CNCF organization. It's also valid to raise issues there. So with that, thank you. We're really looking forward for questions or feedback. Also feedback about the CNCF in general and how things should work in the future. And we are definitely here to try to address this feedback and bring that into the CNCF. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't touch. Huh? Very good. Any questions? Anything? Any remarks? Please.
For your talk and also for your work in the EndUser tab. I really appreciate that. One question regarding the reference architecture that one working group. Is this something that is released as an artifact, being like having real version numbers? So I can say if I'm using V1 of this reference architecture, all the tools are compatible to each other, or is this like a work in progress and will always be kind of style?
No, yeah, we're talking about that. Thank you for raising it, because it's feedback now. It's obviously something important. We think of something that it's a working version. The goal is to keep them alive, which means obviously that you as an end user, if you want to share the reference architecture, that's going to evolve very fast. The more you talk and you see it, the more you're going to think of, like, I can tweak it here, I can tweak it over there now. And then we really think of now different reference architecture with different versions per industry or per region. And then those will evolve with different versions, so it's always backward compatible. And ideally, we want to go even beyond that and have like domain kind of reference architecture. Like you have CI/CD version 1, and then you have observability version 2.1 or something, because you're going to see things evolving. Like you don't have maybe OpenTelemetry right now. Next month you're going to have it. So more or less everything stays the same, except you add OpenTelemetry on top of it. So I'm looking into that, and we're going to have different cards, and hopefully we're going to have a nice UI designer that can work on the UX experience to go through, even through evolution. Because if you see it as a journey, you're going to have a reference architecture, you're going to have a journey story. So if the reference is changing, probably the journey is changing in the sense that you're on a next phase within your evolution. So somehow we need to visualize the journey and the stack at every single point in time.
Thank you, very promising. Thanks.
Sorry.
I've got a bit of a strange question. In the session this morning, Web3 was mentioned as a reoccurrence coming in the industry. Do you see, for projects that may not have that much collaboration and development happening, Web3 being a way with smart contracts to foster developers contributing more actively to projects that may be not as active as you'd like to see?
I would say no. We didn't.
No. Okay.
We don't see it yet. That can change, obviously. I mean, keeping the maintainers happy and motivated, and trying to get either scholarship or sponsorship from different end users in order to keep a certain project health. That's going to happen, and it's going to accelerate, because the lack of transparency maybe doesn't allow us to talk about the problem. But if you as an organization identify that you rely heavily on 10 projects, and then you look at the health state of the projects and you say, 2 of them are still critical for me, but they don't have enough adoption, so why don't I hire someone to work on that full time? Or why don't I pay maybe in a certain way, remunerate the maintainers behind to keep them motivated, to keep a roadmap for another 1 year or so on. So anything is possible, I would say. We have foundation around Web3 as well, so foundation should, what we learn now, Williams Foundation and CNCF, is that the inter-communities conversation needs also to accelerate. We have 2 clear borders that have to be broken down.
Sure, understand.
Yeah. And I think that's a good example, because I think that's something which definitely should be part of the open source strategy of a company itself. So, and I think, or what we see is that at the moment, a lot of companies are just using that and do not bring that much contribution as they can. And yeah, I think that's something. So we see that in many projects. There's very company specific contributions from one large company, and I personally do have some constraints using their project, even if it's open source. So we need more diversity, and that's something the open source strategy of your own company should also address. Yeah.
So if you don't have an OSPO, try building one. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take you probably 2 years to get it. I'm pitching it for 2 years already in Allianz, so it's not an easy journey. But it's like Mario says, as long as you have the strategic approach to open source, which you need to have it, because 80%, 90% of your stack, in cloud native stack, it's open source. So it's strange for you not to have anything to say about your stack. You're completely another kind of locked in, because you can use it, you can see the code, but there's nothing you can do. So, yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
If I wanted to help out with like the mission you're on, stuff you're trying to do, especially like those scorecards, and example, like what would be the correct entry point, or where would I start as an active end user?
Let me know.
I mean, yeah,
I know
we're
what you
colleagues, just as a disclaimer, but as an interested question,
Yeah.
if we weren't colleagues, and
Yeah. So, to be honest, I do not know yet. We already started. There are some kind of public working groups, but we not considered all possible feedback channels yet. So, but there's definitely something we want to publish more and talk a bit more about it.
because I was thinking like most sub projects have like office hours or something where you can
Yeah.
just call in. Is there something already existing like that, or?
Not yet.
Not yet. Something we can add.
Yeah.
Something we can add, and what we want to also centralize. You know, what we want to be able to offer you is like a centralized way of understanding your ecosystem. It's like you don't want to go to 100 different projects on GitHub to understand what the state of that. If you can centralize that and read in the same metrics for every single project, one single status page, that would help you a lot. You know? So where you should start is like talking to us, which I'm sure you do with Mario now, because we want to collect feedback. We're going to propose a draft. We're going to go, ask everyone about the opinion, and then we're going to try to steer it towards something that works fine.
Like, would that stuff also include, like, I guess we all know that CNCF landscape webpage, which no one can actually browse because it's so huge. Like, is that something within your authority or of the end user tab to declutter that, or maybe to, like, could you propose stuff like that, or who actually does that stuff within the CNCF? Good question.
We can address it.
Yeah.
Now we have a voice.
Okay.
We have a voice. We talk to governance board. We talk to TOC, and yeah, I mean, we have to simplify that. And one starting point is reference architecture, because the way I think the difference is like a CNCF with the landscape is like a supermarket. You have thousands of ingredients. And reference architecture is like you want to cook a recipe and you need a subset, you need 20 ingredients. So why don't you zoom in on that? And then you get more information once you do it.
Yeah, in extension to his question, though I'm volunteer, so I just asked the question. Of course, that landscape, when I saw that first time, it's really overwhelming. So, like, it's something, I'm talking about the end user perspective. Like, if I have something on the tab, okay, for example, let's say I'm looking for Prometheus and it says Prometheus and Grafana both work together very well, so you should consider both. So is there anything in consideration for future? So
yes,
user can browse and...
Yeah. So basically, if you have a reference architecture, you're going to have domains reference architecture. You're going to have different versions of CI/CD. And so it's a stack that works together that handles your CI/CD or your observability. So you just take one recipe, sub-recipe, like a sauce. You take one sauce, you put the sauce, you change the sauce, you make it red or white, and it works together. It has to be seen as a whole. And this is a conversation also with the state of the projects, because suddenly a project cannot exist in isolation. Suddenly it's going to be part of a stack. And he has to make sure that the stack is evolving somehow together. Ideally, that's what we're targeting. Let's see how it goes. So.
But that's a good
Thank you.
point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom, for the overview. And I want to come back to your point about the health state of applications. So health state is one thing, of projects. Health state is one thing. The other thing, however, is risk assessment and compliance assessment and all these kind of other not necessarily developer-oriented aspects, but also very important aspects for selecting or not selecting certain project for a certain purpose, industry, and so on. Yeah. So while all the various industries and the vendors in them are notoriously known for not talking to each other, at least I see the opportunity here of like CNCF, in particular the end user tab, of serving as the trusted advisor in between. And kind of gathering this kind of confidential feedback from all the various end users to which you guys have direct contact. And then you can publish, obviously, non-personal and anonymized kind of aggregated form of what are projects used in this industry or that industry and so on. I think this really has an opportunity to kind of move the needle and open doors which otherwise would not have opened simply because people don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
Totally. And actually we talked during the reference architecture, because what we said is like, vendors will fight to get on the reference architectures, right? Like if you have Allianz making public our reference architecture, I'm sure we're going to have a few vendors that will want to be there. So if you want to be there, then let's make sure that all vendors talk the same language, and then we see the integration point, and the conversation will get going around again a domain reference architecture. So they really have to make APIs available. They have to move together, evolving the roadmaps. So that could be a nice start, exactly for what you say.
That's already a next step. I mean, for me, the even easier thing up front is gathering, for example, for financial industry. So gathering all the various open source projects which the various different players in the financial industry in Germany or in Europe, whatever the scope you want to kind of define, what are the projects that all those companies looked at, assessed, agreed on, cleared for usage, and went forward with? I mean, even having that kind of list already is huge. I mean, obviously, make sure that this is coming not vendor influenced and so on, but coming from the actual users. I mean, that already would make a massive difference. I mean, how you assemble all of that into reference architectures, that's even the next step.
Okay. So more like a subset of the landscape.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Landscape for a market, for an industry.
Because the landscape is already, as you rightfully said, it's like a it's a market. No, it's not a market. It's actually like a metro scale warehouse.
Yeah.
And in there, you really need to know what exactly you're looking for. It has very powerful filtering capabilities. So if we manage to figure out what are the right filters, I think we can already use, to a large extent, what's already there. It will be much more usable and consumable.
Agree. Thank you. That's very, very useful.
We already extended the time. Is it fine?
We had
yes.
yeah, of course. No, we have. I mean, yeah. You're sitting between yourself and your lunch, so.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, hi. I have to admit, as a project maintainer, I did not know that the tab exists. So this is more like question, offer, whatever. How do you plan like to collaborate with us, or what can we do to get in touch with the tab? So the Open Telemetry project, for example, we have an end user working group or SIG. So are you working with them already, or is this something where we should get together? So yeah, open-ended question on that.
So at the moment, we are mostly working with the TOC. So because the TOC is the communication point to the projects, and yeah, but yeah, as you said, there are a lot of working groups or technical advisory groups, and to be honest, we didn't really started communicating with all of them, but we know that we should. So if you see there is a need, or yeah, let us know, and we will definitely address that and bring that up to the next session with the entire tab to discuss that, how to get in contact with all these maintainers or contributors or working groups and technical advisory boards and groups and whatever is out there.
I just see that like a lot of things you talked about, we have at a project level as well,
Yeah.
right? So especially the part where you talked about like the channel, how end users can reach out to us. We just last week had this conversation around like, hey, we have Slack, we have Stack Overflow, we have GitHub issues.
Yeah.
And it's not even about like access, but it's like nobody's answering because there's way too many channels to answer that. And then the question is like, maybe other projects have solved this already. Maybe you have a good, and that's what I'm looking for, is like, how can collaboration happen? So, but that's maybe an offline discussion.
That's important feedback.
Yeah.
Actually, we should, nothing should stop us from talking. We should start, now we know that we exist. We know that we coexist, we have to coexist, right? So we should start talking. We have limited capacity, of course. We cannot start new working groups before we actually close the one that we have. We want to have a closure, we want to deliver value, and then we build trust within the customers we are serving, and we have an impact, and then we can grow probably the investment. We're going to get more help from the members of CNCF. But nothing stops us from see how your feedback ends up in the current working groups in the first place, and open up new possible working groups for the future. So sure, let's engage.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.